Imagine you were born in, say, 100, 200 years ago, or even older. The chances of you falling and dying unexpectedly from any simple infections were pretty high. I mean, it was so bad that before the beginning of the 20th century, infectious diseases accounted for the major cause of death worldwide. I mean, at this point, the average life expectancy for humans was about 47 years old, 46 for men, and 48 years old for women. Now, this was the case until the world received a gift in the form of an invention, antibiotics. And for decades, they've been our silent guardians, becoming the frontline disease against the invisible threat of diseases. Antibiotics have become a medical miracle that has transformed healthcare, turning once deadly infections into easily treatable conditions. And as guardians of humanity, they have led to an unprecedented era of longevity and increased lifespan, and also improved recovery times from illnesses. But you see, with the invention of antibiotics came another problem: the rise of an invisible threat, which we now know as antibiotic resistance. And as the world now battles this current threat, we are faced with more questions than ever before. What happens when our silent guardians lose their power? Why is antibiotic resistance developing faster than we anticipated? Are we at risk of losing all the progress we have made in antibiotic discovery? Finally, can we truly claim that we are safe from the consequences of antibiotic resistance? Welcome to Diagnosed. To get to the point of our story, we need to start here in 1928, when an accidental discovery in a London lab by a Scottish bacteriologist, Alexander Fleming, sparked a medical revolution called penicillin. Now, interestingly, even before the discovery of penicillin, there was this guy, Paul Ehrlich, who coined the term magic bullet or Salbakugel at the beginning of the 20th century. Now, in his earlier publications, Ehrlich's concept of Salbakugel was based on the idea of developing drugs with desirable properties that do not harm the body, that is the host, but effectively target a parasitic invader. So, his first magic bullet, asphenamine, known as Salvarsan or Salvarsan 606, which was named as the 606th preparation of that particular drug compound, was discovered in 1909 and was considered the best cure for syphilis at the time. Now, Salvarsan, derived from organic arsenic compounds, was used to effectively treat trypanosomiasis and syphilis, that is, before the development of penicillin starting in 1912. Now, although it was generally considered effective at the time, Salvarsan was no silver bullet or Salbakugel, as patients with conditions such as tabetic or paretic neurosyphilis proved resistant to the treatment. And this presented a significant limitation to the effectiveness of the drug compound. Hence, the discovery of penicillin and all other antibiotics that followed ushered in an unprecedented control over bacterial infections through improvements in drug discovery and drug development. Surgeries became safer, childhood diseases became less fatal, and life expectancy soared and improved. Now, to understand how antibiotic resistance happens, it's very important for us to understand how these remarkable drugs or antibiotics work. Now, antibiotics target essential processes that occur within bacteria, disrupting their ability to grow and to multiply. Now, to achieve this particular goal, some of these drugs attack the cell wall, while others interfere with a process that is called protein synthesis, effectively dismantling the bacteria or dismantling these microscopic invaders from the inside, that is, from within. But like everything else, nature is relentless, and just like any other living organism, bacteria strive to survive. That means that at any point where their survival is faced with a threat, they have no other choice than to adapt. So, by making random mutations in their genetic code, some bacteria develop defenses against targeted antibiotics, hence antibiotic resistance. Now, all this I'm saying may sound like some sci-fi scenario, but the fact is, this is evolution in action. Now, bacteria with these resistant traits are more likely to survive, and when they do, they reproduce, passing on this same genetic code to their future generations. And the more antibiotics are used against them, the greater selective pressure that accelerates this particular process. And that is how we end up having on our hands superbugs, that is, bacteria that when they cause an infection, they become extremely difficult to treat and to eliminate. So why is this happening now at such an alarming rate? Well, the answer in part lies to the overuse and misuse of antibiotics antibiotics in human medicine. Prescribing them for viral infections when they have no effect has become quite a common practice in today's medicine. And when antibiotics are administered, many people don't even complete their full course, and many others self-medicate with antibiotics. And this in itself creates the perfect breeding ground for resistance. So this is Lagos, a sprawling city in Nigeria that is a country in West Africa and one of Africa's largest economies. There are over 20 million people that call this place home, just like me. You see, one of the greatest challenges that we face right now in Nigeria or other parts of Africa is the unfiltered access to medications, both the substandard and the standard medications. In my experience over the past decade caring for patients, I've encountered particular situations where patients become so uncomfortable with the care that their doctor provides for them if the consultation does not end with the provision or an antibiotic prescription, even when it is totally unnecessary. And this doesn't stop there. Besides, it is very easy as a random person to buy and obtain antibiotic medication in this part of the world with or without a doctor's prescription, if you know where to look. In fact, drug control and regulation, whether for pharmacological or for recreational use, are still far from ideal in these parts. In fact, to get a clearer understanding of this, I tested going to different drugstores to purchase antibiotic medications without writing for myself a prescription.
What we are trying to do today is to try to see if we can get some antibiotic medication that ideally shouldn't be given without a doctor's prescription, but then it isn't. So we'll just walk into a couple of pharmacies, see if we can get those drugs, and let's see if that's actually possible. Okay, so we've been to 3 different pharmacies, and my experience was quite revealing because the 3 different drugstores and pharmacies that I visited actually had 3 different products of the same medication and very stark pricing. In fact, the lowest price that I found for this same medication was 1,500 naira, and the highest price was 5,500 naira, which is very, very interesting. But this in itself is a talk for another day, because you can go buy the same drug and it will be a very different price depending on where you visit. The interesting thing is, of course, when I visited these drugstores and pharmacies and I asked for this particular medication, they were able to provide it and give it to me without even requiring a prescription. And what I found out was only one of the pharmacies actually requested what I would like to treat and probably gave me a reasonable dosage for the medication, which is in the morning and in the evening after meals. Not bad at all, but then it still goes to say that anyone can walk into this pharmacy, request for a drug as powerful as ciprofloxacin, and get it. Another thing to remember is that the reason I picked ciproflox is this is one of the most powerful antibiotics or potent antibiotics that you can actually find out there. And indeed, it is supposed to be a prescription-only medication, because this drug actually does come with some certain side effects like nerve damage, which could really be bad. And at some point, ciproflox in itself was thought to be a reserve drug for the treatment of tuberculosis. Would you believe that? Although right now they use other different types of medication from the same class, but it goes to show that this is actually quite a powerful drug that shouldn't just be available if you walk into it. But then, this is Africa, this is Nigeria, and this is the truth and the reality on ground. The funniest thing right now in this experiment is that I've ended up purchasing 3 different versions of the same drug. I have no need for it right now, and it's just going to end up lying somewhere in my house or on my table or on my desk without any proper use. So I have to start thinking of where I want to take this to. So probably I'll give it for free. I really don't know, but maybe I'll give it up to a pharmacy or somewhere. But that's the dilemma, my present dilemma right now.
Now, while this isn't always true everywhere you go in Lagos or in other parts of Nigeria, the mere fact that you can purchase and these drugs can be bought over the counter and used at will is a much bigger problem than we thought. And when we probe even further, the problem extends beyond our clinics. In agriculture, antibiotics are often used to promote growth in livestock such as poultry, swine, and cattle through what is known as low-level antibiotic feeding. Now, in most cases, these farmers ignore responsible antibiotic use, forgetting that the use of low-level antibiotic is only to enhance and it doesn't replace good sanitation and safe animal husbandry. Now, this adds to the pool of resistant bacteria that can eventually make its way to us as humans. Now, it's alarming to note that despite several decades of debates and deliberations on the recommendations from even the 1969 Swan report, clear evidence directly linking human health problems to meat animal-fed antibiotics or contact with them remains elusive. Now, this doesn't change the fact that ingesting antibiotic-loaded agricultural products can lead to antibiotic resistance, notably E. coli and Salmonella, with prolonged use causing longer-lasting antibiotic resistance. So right now, it is not too early to say that we have reached a tipping point. Imagine a world where a simple cut could lead to a life-threatening condition. Imagine a point where routine surgeries become incredibly risky, where illnesses that we once took for granted now once again become deadly. Now, this isn't some hyperbole. This is currently happening in clinics and in different hospitals all around the world. And now it seems like we have come full circle, potentially at risk of losing all the gains that we have made in human longevity almost close to a century ago. So this is a time for you to think about your grandparents, think about your children, think that infections that are currently easily managed could become untreatable in the nearest future. Pneumonia, urinary tract infections, and even skin infections could once again become deadly and claim lives. All the progress that we have made in healthcare over the last century is now at risk of being undone. And what's worse, it takes over 10 years and at least $1 billion to produce a new line of antibiotic medication. Even though the science community is working tirelessly to develop new antibiotic discovery or an alternative treatment, this remains a very complex and costly endeavor. So we, that is you and I, that are currently watching this video, we all have a responsibility to bear. We need to be more mindful on how we consume and how we use antibiotics. It is important to only use antibiotics when it is prescribed by a doctor and completing the full course that has been administered to you, and not demanding them for use in viral infections where they are completely unnecessary. Simple hygiene practices such as frequent hand washing can also help to prevent the spread of infections in the first place, and hence reducing the need for antibiotics. Ultimately, the fight against antibiotic resistance remains a global challenge that demands a collective effort from you and I. Understanding the science behind antibiotic resistance, recognizing the potential consequences, and taking responsible actions are all essential for us to appreciate and grasp how far we have come in protecting ourselves, and to determine what we need to do to preserve future generations from this invisible yet very real threat. Now, as the world gets ready to celebrate a century of the discovery of one of humankind's greatest gifts and inventions, it is important that we look forward with hope rather than look backward in despair at the progress that we have made so far that has now become undone. Now, if this video resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more contents like this. See you in the next one.